right, well, it's 12:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, man, I am really excited to come and talk to everybody today about data-driven improvement for manufacturing. I know that's kind of a broad subject, but we're going to distill it down and give you guys some information that you can use to take back to your organizations and ultimately become more of a data-driven manufacturing industry, if that's the industry that you're in, which hopefully you are, because that's what we're talking about today. I want to give just a quick intro to myself. My name is Tim, and I work as the Chief Operating Officer for Brewster Consulting Group. My background is primarily in healthcare and higher education project management and operations leadership. And I've used what we're talking about today to drive a ton of value at organizations. I'm really happy to share some of that with you all today. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to switch to the next screen here. Someone shout if you're able to see a blank Brewster Consulting Group screen. Just want to make sure that we're all in good shape. Going to go through a little bit of housekeeping here. First, again, just thank you so much for coming. We know you all are busy people, and we just want to thank you for spending a little bit of time with us to talk about data-driven improvement for manufacturers. So from the Brewster Consulting Group team, we just thank you very, very much for joining us today. You are muted, and that is by design, but please feel free to use the chat and QA feature. Should be over on the right-hand side of your screen here within Webinar Jams. That is where you can interact with some of the other folks on the webinar today. And if you have specific questions for me, you can also use the Q&A tab. That'll only go to me. Or if you have feedback that's just only for my eyes, please share it there as well. So let's practice real quick. Let's use the chat feature and chat in there your most pressing data issue that you're currently experiencing at your manufacturing organization. Tell me a little bit about what's going on. I'll wait here just to get a response or two. Scott, my problem is more that my operations team isn't talking to my sales team to understand needs and potential issues for the future. Oh man, Scott, I'm so glad you brought that up. We're going to talk about that whenever we talk about data silos. So I'm really excited for you to be able to learn a little bit more there. And hopefully you can take something from that and go back to your sales team and your operations team to run a little bit more smooth. So great. Well, let's go ahead and dive on in. Okay. So who is Brewster Consulting Group really quickly, and why should you listen to us? This is the senior leadership team of Brewster Consulting Group. So over on your left-hand side, you've got Cade. Cade grew up in financial services. He is a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and he's led process improvement and project management functions at organizations that he's worked at in the past. Cade really started Brewster Consulting Group with the vision of being able to provide data analytics, process improvement, and project management services to firms that really outshine our competition. So everyone's worked with an expensive consultant who's delivered really little value to your organization. I know I have, and we really bump that curve whenever it comes to delivering measurable value to you and your organization. And that's the foundation that Cade's really built this business on. Moving to the right, Ben Vaughn. Ben grew up in healthcare and grocery, and Cade likes to say that he collects certifications like it's his job. So Ben is a PMI certified project management professional, a PMP. He's also a certified Six Sigma black belt. He's a CFA, and he's got a master's in analytics from Duke University. Ben really runs our service delivery team as the VP of Analytics Services. And is just an all-around nice guy. I will say that for sure. And if there's any question that you can stump Ben on whenever it comes to data, I would love to know what that question is so that I can make fun of him next time. Over on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see Greg. Greg is our VP of Sales, and he's got a wealth of experience in just building relationships with our clients and maintaining those relationships that we are fortunate enough to earn from our clients through their business. And then last but not least, myself, I grew up, like I said before, in higher education and healthcare. I am also a certified project management professional. I'm an MBA graduate, and I've driven about $30 million of value at organizations using methodologies that we're really talking about today. So I want to take a second to give a shout out to all the small to medium-sized businesses from a manufacturing perspective on the webinar today. You guys have a hard job. Why do we care about manufacturing small to medium-sized businesses? I know that you all have heard this if you're in this space. This is a traditionally underserved space in the data and analytics environment. We've all heard the excuses, right? Like, all right, SMBs don't have enough money, or they're really too small to benefit from data and analytics. We don't think that's true at all, to put it very transparently. We've made it our commitment at Brewster Consulting Group to serve manufacturing SMBs and other SMBs as our foundation and build data functions at these organizations really as one of our primary focuses. So now, you big manufacturers out there, you make up a huge part of our business too. And we're so privileged to have those of you that we work with as our partners as well. But specifically wanted to call out the small to medium-sized business manufacturing folks. You guys do have a hard job, and we're really privileged that you're here today with us. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to talk about the 4 key data issues that are facing manufacturing in today's environment. And then we're also going to walk through a use case. The 4 key data issues that we're going to hit on today: number 1, data accuracy and consistency. Number 2, we're going to talk about data silos. Number 3, we're going to talk about historical data and reporting. And then number 4, we're going to talk through manual data processes. So those are the 4 key data issues facing manufacturing that we see most of the time whenever we're working with manufacturers. And then we're going to walk through that real life use case to hopefully put what we learned in practice. Okay. So first, starting with data accuracy and consistency. Let's pretend for a minute that we are the director in a motor vehicle manufacturing facility, and hood stamp time is the KPI that we're trying to measure across the members of 3 teams, okay? I've got 3 managers: George, who's the manager of Team A, and he defines hood stamp time as the first stamp time to the time that it arrives at the next station across the assembly line, all right? Pretty logical definition for a hood stamp time from a KPI perspective, right? We've got Sean, who's the manager of Team B, and Sean describes hood stamp time as the KPI, and here's how he measures it: from the previous station's stop time to the hood stamp time at the new station on the assembly line. So again, somewhat of a logical definition for hood stamp time, but it's different from George's, right? And then finally, we've got Leah, who's the manager of Team C, and she defines the hood stamp time KPI as the first stamp time to the conveyor start to the next station. So all 3 of these definitions are pretty logical definitions for hood stamp time as the KPI, but they're all different, right? Fundamentally, these 3 are essentially speaking a different language, right? If everyone's speaking a different language, then at the definition level right here, the data that you're going to get at the aggregated level is going to be completely useless because you're starting off with a faulty foundation. The point I'm trying to make here is no matter the KPI that you're measuring, if everybody's got a different definition, it's useless. And then the measurement systems that you're going to build further on down the line are also going to be useless. And the data that you're using to make critical decisions for your business is also going to be useless too. So my question for you is, can you say without a shadow of a doubt that at your organization, everybody is speaking the same language from a definition perspective? If not, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say you really need to get that straightened out as soon as possible, because any kind of decision making for you as the leader really hinges on your team's ability to stay on the same page and make sure that everything is running smoothly, right? Moving on to our next key data issues. I will say of all 4 key data issues that we're talking about today, this one is probably the most frustrating to a leader. Data silos are super easy to build, but they're extremely tough to break down once they've been built, but they really need to be broken down in order for a business to grow and really just to operate smoothly, right? So as a small business, let's use an example. You might have started out with a CRM platform to track your client details, right? You've experienced some growth, and now you realize you need a CAD system to digitally model some of your products, right? So you implemented a CAD system, and then you realize, man, it'd be really nice if my CRM and my CAD system talked to one another so that I could overlay client details with the products they're buying. But we moved on to the next thing as an operator, which is probably in that situation not a bad thing to do. But at that time, we didn't connect these systems, right? Let's say another year goes by and your organization has grown significantly. You've got 3 to 4 additional core systems you're using, but none of these are tied together. Your design instructions, for example, can't be overlaid on your product details to learn where you might be experiencing a significant amount of waste in your plant. Does this sound like you? I promise that you're not alone. The next key data issue that we're going to be talking about is historical data and reporting, okay? So the question that we're asking in our minds here is to data warehouse or to not data warehouse, or not to data warehouse, I should say. So some of you might be familiar with a data warehouse, but others of you might not. At a base level, a data warehouse helps you to compile data from multiple different systems and merge it all together using defined guardrails and rules that you set up that are going to drive data visibility and be able to enable you to affect change at your organization. So what are some of the signs that you might need a data warehouse at your organization? Number one, might be difficult for you to make future projections using the data that you have. Number two, you perceive your data structure to be pretty complex. You might have multiple different systems that maybe you as a leader don't have line of sight into all of those systems. Number three, you struggle to produce accurate, consistent reporting. That's a pretty big sign that you might need a data warehouse or might benefit from having a data warehouse. Another reason, or another sign that you might need a data warehouse is that you use multiple systems, and those systems are limited by the shelf life of the in-app reporting that you've got. So you can lose information after a certain amount of time. And the last sign that we see whenever we work with manufacturers specifically, is that you've hired a data person who's manually pulling information out of multiple systems. They're combining it in Excel in the best way that they know possible, and then that's feeding a manual Power BI dashboard. If that sounds like you, that is a really good indication that you need to consider having a data warehouse. So let's use a specific example to kind of talk through what I've just articulated here. Let's use an IT managed services provider just to kind of break from manufacturing just a second. Let's say they started out with just 20 clients and they were managing IT services for all of these 20 clients, right? Fast forward a couple of years, now they've grown to over 100 clients. They've added 2 more core systems and they're hearing complaints from their clients about the accuracy of the reports that they're being fed, right? Big problem. We need to be able to be feeding our clients accurate data, and a data warehouse essentially helps to solve that problem. Let's use another example. We'll talk about gym memberships. Let's pretend that you're an owner of a gym and you started out in one location with 20 clients, and now you've grown to 5 locations, and now you've got 1,000 clients. You've now got different people that you've hired that are managing the system that tracks new membership behavior. And that is introducing some variability into your business that you want to make sure that you curb as much as possible. You've also now gotten to the point as the owner that you've experienced some turnover from your client perspective, and you want to better understand the entire client life cycle so that specific value-added opportunities can be plugged in at specific intervals so that you increase your customer retention in spots in the past where your clients may have dropped off and gone down to the gym at down the street. So these are just a couple examples of SMBs, so small to medium-sized businesses that could really benefit from having better line of sight into historical data and could benefit from having an automated data warehouse as well. So I'll say, moving on to our last key data issue here, while data silos are the most frustrating to a leader, like we talked about before, this is definitely the most common of the data issues that we see. So in order to drive the point home here, let me ask you a question. Think about in the last week, how much time have you as a manufacturing leader exported raw data out of spreadsheets and tried to either pinpoint a specific trend or issue, or maybe you've pulled in another expensive FTE to try to do the same thing manually? you've wasted time. You've introduced additional variability now because you've got other people trying to look at this stuff, and they're not operating off of the same definition level information like we talked about a little bit before. And you're manually manipulating the data such that the next time you need to pull it, you're going to need to do all of that manual work again. Overall, manual data processing is really like putting a Band-Aid on a gushing fire hydrant. You might solve one small problem, but not before you've sprung like 65 other leaks over on the other side of the fire hydrant. And now you've got this, Band-Aid infested fire hydrant with water spewing out all over the place. Now, let me be very clear. We don't sell a specific technology. A flashy new system being fed bad data is still causing you to make bad decisions, right? You're just now paying more for that system, and that doesn't help anyone. That said, we are huge fans of technology and the right systems to meet the need of the business that we're working with. You may not know it, but there are systems out there that are pretty affordable to small and medium-sized businesses, specifically in the manufacturing space, that can save you hours of manual data manipulation and really get you on the track to data visibility and ultimately improve decision-making whenever it comes to your business decisions. These are some of the examples here on your screen: Tableau, Alteryx, EasyMorph, OpenLytics, Power BI. We're familiar with all of these systems. We've used just about all the analytic systems that are out there and can really attest to the value that they bring an organization for pretty low effort whenever it comes to using these systems. Tammy, thanks for chatting in. What would you suggest for companies that have a lack of data? Like, my employees are still using pen and paper for some forms of data collection. Man, Tammy, that's a really good question. We see it a lot of times in manufacturing where folks are still working kind of from pen and paper. Whenever you have a lack of data, having a good data governance structure kind of to start off with is absolutely essential. So understanding what the desired outcomes are for your business, and then crafting those KPIs that are going to help you meet those desired outcomes, and then building the systems that will be able to help you do that and collect that data would be one of the suggestions that I would have. Thank you for asking that question. That's a really good question that you asked here. All right. Any other questions before I move on here? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide here. All right, so we are almost to the use case, but before we get there, I want to summarize what we've learned so far, okay? Our 4 key data issues that we see primarily in manufacturing are, number 1, data accuracy and consistency. We talked about the different definitions, the different managers who have definitions for the exact same metric. That's a problem. Data silos, right? 2 or more business systems that are not integrated. Again, another problem as businesses specifically continue to grow. This can introduce a lot of issues at your business if you do not have those business systems integrated to be able to accommodate the outcomes that you're after. Number 3, historical data and reporting, your inability to project future forecasts and past performance with your current data sets. So huge problem, right? If you're not able to project your volume over the next 6 months so that you know how to pivot from what you're doing right now to be able to meet those projections and meet year-end goals and quarter goals and things like that. And finally, manual data processes, using Excel and manual formulas and exports to develop important dashboards. Excel is not bad just on its own. Where it introduces a problem is how you are using it, right? It's not the tool that you're using, it's how you're using the tool. We use Excel all the time, and it's an extremely valuable tool to us as we feed dashboards in some of the other programs that we use and some of our clients use as well. All right, so before I get to the use case, using the chat feature one more time just to make sure I know folks are still with me here. Pick one of the key issues that you see on your screen here, and I want you to describe another example that your organization struggles with. And maybe you did that before and it ties into one of these, just give me a quick thumbs up that you're like, okay, I get what you're talking about, Tim. Thumbs up. Thanks, Tammy. Appreciate it. All right, we will move on here. So I hope I haven't lost anyone. The doom and gloom of kind of talking about the issues is now over, and we're going to transition into talking about how you can alleviate some of these issues practically with the use case that we're going to go through here today. Okay. So what is our approach? Kind of high level, what do we do whenever we go about helping organizations, specifically manufacturers, resolve these key issues that we've talked about? Where we start really involves three primary steps, right? Number one, organizational goals and strategy determined. I forget who said it, but you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? You need to make sure that you've got your organizational goals and your strategy nailed down, because everything kind of builds off of that, right? Aligning your people, your processes, and your technology all together will enable you to be able to meet those organizational goals and define your strategy and develop deliverables that are going to help you to achieve that strategy. Number two, your key process is identified. So in our approach, what we do is we analyze the processes that are out there. We identify the ones that are most impactful to the outcome of the customer that we're working with. And then we identify those and then we map them, right? So that's the step number three. Key processes reviewed to determine maturity level. And to be able to do that, we've got to be able to map those processes out so that we understand them, and then go through the definition exercise like we talked about before. From there, what we do is we follow a 4-step process, and you can see that at the bottom of your screen here, right? So phase one is evaluation, where we look at the key processes, we evaluate them, we get the buy-in from the business that these are the ones that we should be looking at, and then we help to move on to the next phase, which is our foundation level, phase two. We build a foundation by developing key processes to a minimum of level 3. And I'm going to show you the process maturity scale here in just a little bit. It's a proprietary internal framework that we use. Level 3 will make sense to you here in just a little bit. That's our goal. We want to get all the processes to level 3, and then from there we can continue to build. Phase number 3 is continuous improvement. So to continue to improve key processes by standardizing, going through your typical process improvement, project management type exercises, measuring those key processes, and then reducing defects, specifically within manufacturing. I know everybody wants to get all the defects out, and that's what we're here to help with as well. And finally, phase 4, this is kind of to infinity and beyond, if you will. We like to foster the use of technology and really that digital transformation to innovate and drive processes forward. So that's our approach. One of the big questions that we hear. Oh, and I'm seeing another chat here. You miss 100% of the shots, that you don't take. That's from Wayne Gretzky. Scott, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. And I'm not a huge hockey fan, but Michael Jordan might have said that too. And I'm a basketball fan, so we'll roll with that. I was saying one of the big things that we hear from folks whenever we kind of share this approach with them is all of this is really great, right? But how do you get initial buy-in and alignment from senior leaders? Well, man, I'm really glad that you asked that, because we're going to talk about that right now. Put really simply, what we do is we take the time to understand the existing operations of a business and the technology of that business, and then we align our approach with the appetite of the specific organization that we're working with. What we do then is we marry that with our process maturity scale, which I'm going to talk to you about here in just a second. I've referenced it a couple of times now. The output of those two things that you're seeing on your screen here is a future state architecture that now really incorporates alignment and the buy-in with the improvement deliverables that organizations are trying to achieve, right? So that's our approach on how we align people, processes, and technology. So to articulate this even a little bit better, I've got an impact tree that I want to share with you. We believe at Brewster Consulting Group that an organization is just a sum of its micro level parts, right? So at a macro level, top level, it's just made up of all of the smaller levels, the micro level parts. So let's say that we're the director of a manufacturing operation and we really want to improve our customer satisfaction rate, right? So why do we care about customer satisfaction? Well, customer satisfaction leads to customer retention, which in turn leads to additional revenue, right? Not to mention the relationships that can be built with customers who are satisfied that leads to ultimately new business as well. So if we're trying to impact customer satisfaction, how are we proposing that we measure it? Well, let's say that we want to move our score, so our net promoter score, from a 6.0 to an 8.0. Which if you know anything about NPS scores, that's a pretty big hop. So that is our defined goal, right? How can we break down customer satisfaction? It's very difficult for me just to tell a director of mine, hey, go improve customer satisfaction. First question they're going to have is, well, how do we do that, right? We do that by impacting specific things that then impact customer satisfaction. In this case, those things for manufacturers are number one, on-time delivery, competitive job costing, the simplicity of orders, and staff friendliness. How do we impact, say, on-time delivery here, right? Well, let's say we want to move on-time delivery rate from 75% to 90%. How do we do that? Well, we have operations management in place. We have our vendor management in place as well, and staffing management, who all play a part in that on-time delivery, which will move your on-time delivery rate from 75 to 90%, which will in turn increase your customer satisfaction. So you guys can see how the whole point of, at a macro level, that customer satisfaction piece is influenced by all the micro level parts. And if you influence those micro level parts, it'll work its way up to ultimately increase revenue for you as a business. So this is what we can actually affect. We can affect operations management, vendor management, staffing management. We can't just go out and say, improve customer satisfaction. So this is really what we get at whenever we talk about process maturity and running processes through the scale to make them more mature. So I want to set the stage just a second before we get to our process maturity scale. I promise that's coming up on the next slide. Some of you have been waiting for it. We use a proprietary framework that is internal to us whenever we evaluate businesses and driving those desired outcomes, called the process maturity scale, okay? It's an 8-point scale, and it's used for evaluating and rating process maturity. Each level incorporates different deliverables from the previous levels to progress to the next level of process maturity. And the idea is that process maturity helps distill down your organizational strategy to tactical steps, right? Impacting those micro level steps that are going to help drive improvement in performance at a macro level for your organization. Another thing it does, it also helps align and prioritize a lot of the disparate initiatives that you've got going on at your organization in order to maximize the impact that they're actually making. Sorry. Let me go back here, scroll down on accident. There was the process maturity scale. You got a glimpse of it before I got into it here. What problems does this solve, right? What problems does process maturity solve? Well, number one, it helps to solve disorganized internal process. It really provides a collaborative, standardized organizational approach to developing your own internal processes, right? Another problem it solves is unclear ownership. It places ownership instead for developing processes clearly on process owners and on your leaders. The third thing that it solves is misalignment between key stakeholders, right? It encourages continuous improvement of processes, including a focus on alignment with key organizational drivers. So helps to solve that problem. Convoluted strategy and roadmaps. Everybody's been part of an organization where there's been a strategy that's been put in place, and it's like, all right, help me understand, talk to me like I'm a fifth grader, right? So process improvement and process maturity helps to alleviate that as well. Provides managers a clear roadmap for aligning with the strategy of an organization. And finally, it helps to solve the problem of scattershot resourcing. Provides a framework for prioritization and organization of transformation initiatives at your organization and your resource allocation for those transformation activities. Okay. All right. So I flashed it up for you here a second ago, and here it is. What we're looking at here is our process maturity scale that we use whenever we work with clients. The idea of the process maturity scale is to effectively evaluate the maturity of processes and outline the roadmap to improve those processes up the scale. Okay. So you'll see we've bucketed each of these processes in kind of one of three buckets. The first bucket, goals of level 1 through 3, is really a clear understanding of the business objectives backed by sound data, right? So to progress through this point, you have to have defined the key metrics that have supporting process maps and owners. If you don't do anything else, those are the things that you have to have. So earlier, whenever we talked about getting all of the processes to process group 3, that's what we're talking about. You need to have your owners identified. You need to know what the processes are, have them documented, and have your subject matter experts identified as well. Levels 4 through 5 over on the left-hand side of your screen here really take you through that standardization journey, right? Things like waste reduction in manufacturing, optimization. This ultimately leaves you with an accurate reporting structure and clear opportunities for improvement. So in this bucket level, really the goal is to standardize, to be able to measure your accurate data that you've defined in levels 1 through 3, and then progress on to the next step. Levels 6 through 8 really take you to the next level whenever it comes to your business. So you can automate now. You've got a data infrastructure that really unlocks your business's potential to do things like robotics process automation and digital strategy and transformation, things like that. Most organizations that we work with, I'm going to tell you, are on steps 1 through 3. So if you're looking at this and you're kind of diagnosing where you're at as an organization, and you're in levels 1 through 3, I can tell you that you're not alone. You're not behind. I will also tell you that you can skip to steps 6 through 8. You can try robotics process automation, but you can't do that well without going through the appropriate steps. Think about this with me. If you've got a robotics process automation program kind of at your organization, but you haven't defined at the definition level what it means to have good or what it means to have hood assembly time, it's not going to do you any good, right? You're just going to be paying more money for these expensive systems that are continuing to be fed bad data, which is not what anybody wants to do, right? So ultimately you can skip, but we know skipping doesn't work. You've got to crawl before you can walk, like we say. But when you're running, it's pretty fun once you get to those goals, level 6 through 8, or those 6 through 8 buckets. That's a really, really cool spot to be, because you can really unlock some really neat potential for your business. So what does this look like in execution, right? You'll notice up in the top right-hand corner, we've got a little emblem for Widget Co. This is a fictional data company, or a fictional manufacturing company, that we created. And they want to optimize their widget production process to reduce defects and increase their production volume, right? So at Brewster Consulting Group, what are the first steps that we would take? Well, number one, we're going to clearly define the SMEs and the owners. In Widget Co's specific instance, the production manager is identified as the owner of the process, and then the frontline employees are identified as the subject matter experts, the folks who are boots on the ground actually doing the work. From there, you have a process mapping exercise where we're going to go through and we're going to map the production process. And number 3, we're going to define the key metrics that are going to influence that process and develop a data dictionary. Okay. So let's take a look at a process map. If you've never seen one before, what we do at Brewster Consulting Group, we put the responsible parties as the swim lanes. So material specialist, assembly technician, quality inspector in this specific example, right? And then we overlay the process on top of that to show what the process is and who's responsible for it. You can see in our example here, it starts with the material specialist selecting and acquiring the raw materials required for the widget production, and it ends with either the widgets being packaged and shipped or the waste discarded. And start and end points are delineated by ovals, typically in a process map. Start is green, end is red. Anything that's in a rectangular box, that's typically a process, and anything that is a diamond, that's typically a decision point. Oh, Mike, I missed your question here. Let me get to it. I think my processes are pretty well documented and defined. What can the scale do for me beyond that? Mike, that is a really, really good question. Let me get back to that slide here real quick. Give me just a second. Here we are. Once you've got your information documented, and it sounds like it has been documented, you can continue by determining improvement opportunities and leveraging data and things like Six Sigma methodology, so process improvement methodology, tracking via dashboards, reports, and things like that. You can also start mapping how these processes are impacted by other business units, which is what we found is really rarely done in a lot of manufacturing organizations. So those hopefully give you a couple of good ideas as to how you could do that. And this is even applicable in much larger companies than just your small to medium-sized businesses for manufacturing. Great question. Sorry I missed that. Forgive me. All right. We were right here. All right. Everybody still see my screen? Just want to make sure. Let's do a quick gut check before we move on. All right, Tammy, thanks a lot. So back to our process maps here. Pretty simple, right? Just about any one of the processes here on your screen delineated by a rectangle can be blown out if there are inconsistencies in understanding. I'm going to tell you right now, 90+% of organizations that we work with, we find just don't have their key processes mapped out. How are leaders supposed to be able to make decisions when everyone has a different understanding of how a process should work, right? The approach that we take whenever we work with organizations is to identify the most impactful processes. Like I said before, we identify the subject matter experts of those processes, and then we get them documented. We just need to put them down on paper so everybody agrees to it. I will say too, when you're putting together process maps, it's a really good thing for leaders to argue about processes. The goal with aligning your processes is alignment, right? Arguments are basically an affirmation that everybody was on a different page and are now working to be on the same page. So you want to see leaders argue whenever it comes to processes, because that's going to ultimately drive improvement. Okay, moving on here. Before we talked about speaking the same language and the importance of speaking the same language and establishing your most important metrics. How those metrics are defined is really necessary for consistency and alignment in your business. So in this example, the key metrics that we've identified here at this manufacturing organization, Widget Co., are over here on the left-hand side, right? Production cycle time, throughput rate, first pass yield, rework rate, OEE, defect density, on-time delivery rate, and downtime rate. On the right-hand side, kind of in the middle of your screen here, is a sample data dictionary entry for the production cycle time KPI. I want to call out some of the key components of a data dictionary here. The key components are, number one, the actual metric itself, right? The description, which in this case is the time it takes to complete a single unit of a widget from the beginning of the production process to the end. And then the technical definition, which is in the calculation. This is going to pull from the ERP system, and it's going to produce a consistent result for you every single time to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language. Whenever you have a technical definition that takes tables within your ERP, calculates it, it's very hard and introduces far less variability than it does asking, Sean and Leah, the managers of these areas, what does it mean from a production cycle time? How do we measure it? And what does that KPI mean to us? So this is what we mean whenever we talk about a data dictionary. Once you've got your processes mapped, you've got your key metrics identified and defined, then you can really move on to measuring the inputs to determine where there's opportunity for improvement here. I'm going to say it again, a fancy dashboard or a fancy system with bad data feeding it is like putting lipstick on a pig, right? As a leader, you'll make changes to your operation relying on that bad data, and you're going to continue to spin your wheels if you don't get that portion right before you move on to the measurement system. The hard work has to be done before you move on to establishing what your measurement system looks like. We all want to get to the point where we see how everything's functioning, but we need to do the work to be able to get there, right? If you do the hard work, standing up the measurement system, like with what you see here on your screen, is actually pretty easy. You've got a data dictionary now that tells you how a calculation is determined. You point that to Power BI or another system to the fields on those specific tables within that system. You rinse and repeat, and now you've got accurate data and a story of where you should put your time as a leader, and now you're making good decisions for your business. So in this specific example, we can see that our average widget production time up at the top is 9 hours, 6 minutes, and 43 seconds. We can also see that component manufacturing and widget assembly time on the top left takes significantly longer than any of the other components of the process. Now, that may be because of the operation itself, but it also could be illuminating an opportunity for waste reduction or improvement in the time that it takes to have the components manufactured and assemble the widgets. So this process map is really an output of a well-built measurement system. This is the goal of what we want to get to by having good definitions for our data, for being able to measure it accurately. You'll see the same process map here on your screen as we were looking before, except now we've overlaid the times and the average durations indicating where there are opportunities for improvement here, right? So in this example, we see that it takes our quality inspector an average duration of 59 minutes and 9 seconds to audit and conduct stress tests on the finalized widgets down there at the bottom, right? That sounds like a really long time to me. So as a leader, this is now a step in the process that I can dig into. I can create an additional process map that really blows that out, and I can identify further areas for improvement within that specific process. And the idea here is continuous improvement, right? We can dive into each of these processes to understand what is taking the longest time. And we know in manufacturing specifically that at scale, if you're able to make small improvements, that makes a huge difference overall, right? All right, so that was a ton. And now I want to circle this wagon around, right? So if you distill down everything that I just talked about into 10 steps, these would be those steps. Number one, define your goals, right? You need to have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Number two, define the key metrics that you want to measure that are going to influence your goals. So talking about that micro level and macro level influence, right? You need to influence the micro level pieces of your organization that will in turn influence the macro level, the highest functions of your organization. Number three, from there, you identify your most impactful processes. Where is our low-hanging fruit, right? Where are we going to get the most bang for our buck whenever it comes to improving our processes? From there, we identify the owners of those most impactful processes and the subject matter experts that influence those processes. We process map those out. We have an understanding. We get leaders to argue about what the process is. We nail it down. You define the process metrics that you're going to measure. So within those processes, what are the key measurement points that we need to actually measure and improve? You're going to build a data dictionary so everybody's speaking the same language. From there, you can build your measurement system that is now being fed with accurate, good data that you'll be able to drive decision-making off of. From there, you'll analyze your opportunities for improvement and root cause if there are specific issues, and then take action, right? If you don't take action after doing all of this work, all that you have is a fancy dashboard, right? All that you have is something cool to look at. Dashboards and data are meant to be used to take action on and drive results for your business. So if you do everything else and you don't take action, well, good luck. That's all I've got to say. Please, if you do the work to get your data in a point where you can actually make decisions on it, please don't let the taking action portion be what holds you up, okay? So if the steps that I covered seem difficult, or you just want to discuss more about your individual situation, then we want to connect with you, okay? I'll say this, you can keep doing what you've been doing and not getting the results that you need for your business, or we can have a conversation about how we can help you. I want you guys to remember, we've driven over $50 million worth of improvement at organizations that we've worked with by doing what we've talked about today. And if we're being fully transparent, we've not worked with a client yet that we couldn't help improve and turn a return on investment for them. The QR code here on your screen is going to redirect you to a calendar page where you can schedule a meeting with us. There is no commitment necessary, but if you really want to make a change in your business that's going to result in improvement to you, I hope that you'll schedule some time with us. I'm going to stick around for a little bit and answer any lingering questions that you might see in the chat, or that I might see in the chat, excuse me. So please feel free to chat them now. And with that, I just want to tell you again that I really appreciate each of you coming, and really look forward to talking with each of you. And again, thank you for spending time out of your busy day to come and talk with me. I'm going to stick around, but for those of you that need to hop, please feel free to do so. I just want to thank everyone for their time.